Let's talk Usman Garuba. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. I'm here with the man, Sam Vecenie, to talk NBA draft, specifically a power forward out of Real Madrid. He's 6'8". He's about 230. He's 19 years old. This is a beast of a defender. Let's talk there. Let's just talk his strengths, because this guy is, the translatable skill is the defense.
Yeah, no question. Usman Garuba is a guy that's been on the NBA's, let's say their developmental pathway for a while now. Scouts have been aware of him for at least 3, maybe 4 years. He's a high-level prospect that is coming down the pike. He was considered at one point as like a potential top 5 pick, given how quickly he developed early in the course of his career. He's been playing real minutes for Real Madrid now for 2 years, and this is his first draft eligible year. The way that we talked about Alperen Şengün in terms of his offensive firepower, that's what Garuba brings defensively. He is genuinely one of the most polished, smart, and high-level defenders I think I've ever evaluated as a teenager. I have him very high on my board comparatively to where I feel like he is right now. Consistently, I see him more like 15 to 20 range. I have him as a very solid lottery pick. And it's all because of the defense. I mean, just what he brings to the table. There's nothing he really can't do outside of one thing that I'm worried about within the skill set translation. But more than anything, I see him as maybe the best big pick and roll defender I've ever evaluated as a teenager. He is so good at playing versatile coverages. You can switch him out onto guards. You can have him play a drop because he's so strong and physically powerful. You can have him play in more of a cat and mouse game in that drop where he's supposed to come out and like maybe show up forward toward the ball handler and then drop back and try to force a tough pass. He gets a ton of deflections that way. He's just a really smart guy. And this isn't him getting these deflections against, 18, 19-year-old point guards who don't really know what they're looking at whenever they're looking at a pick and roll yet. He's doing this against seasoned veterans in the Euro League, in the ACB League. It's really, really impressive what he's been able to do defensively. He's a really good weak side rim protector. He gets a lot of blocked shots, also on jump shots, either coming from behind in recovery or just closing out to shooters. And offensively, I do think he is switchable. I would say 2 through 5. There are going to be some ones he's going to be able to be switchable onto, but for the most part, I don't know that I'd want him like long-term out on an island against the quickest guys. But Usman Garuba is the real deal on defense, I think.
Yeah, he's out there stripping like Vasilij Micić out there, who is like one of the better guards, and a guy who keeps pump faking the NBA and pump faking the Thunder out there. But I'm
so sorry about Micić, Andrew.
I know. I am so sad. I'm so sad about that. But Garuba, I'm so intrigued at the idea of him being. A lot of people want to talk about like the modern big. When we talk about that, you think like Jokic, like passing, shooting, like. But he's a modern defending big. Like he's going to defend the modern game. And a lot of people worry about drafting bigs. I wouldn't worry about drafting him because I think he's going to be able to plug in and play as a defender and grow. Let's talk about his offensive game because he's a little bit more limited on this end. What do you see in him that will translate, and what do you think he could be down the road?
So, in terms of limitations, right? I think that a big one is on both ends that he's not the most like explosive guy going upward. Like he's not this guy who skies in the air. Even though he's 6'8" and has like a 7'2" wingspan, he can catch lobs, but it's not like he is some dude with incredible vertical pop, right? He's pretty good vertical pop. And where that worries me is as a pick and roll man, given the fact that he's 6'8", I worry that he's not going to be able to like high point the ball the same way that some of these centers that are relatively low usage centers are going to be able to high point the ball. Like someone like Isaiah Jackson at Kentucky, he's just always going to be able to get a little bit higher than where Usman Garuba does. And even Isaiah Jackson is like a little bit undersized for where the center position is today in the NBA. And the thing with Garuba is that also plays itself out a little bit on defense, as well, because there are moments where bigger guys can kind of finish over the top of him in a way that is a little bit concerning for a guy that I think is profiles better, let's say, as a 5-man as opposed to being a true 4. Right now, just due to the offensive limitations, the offensive side of the floor, I think that where there's room for growth, he's clearly worked hard over the course of the last, I would say, year and a half to add that corner 3-point jumper, like right at the break 3-point jumper. And it doesn't look awesome right now, but there's enough there to where you can at least project potential. And guys that are hard workers, I do tend to bet on them to figure out the jump shot aspect, at least from a standstill. If he can just be a corner standstill jump shooter, that's probably going to be enough. On top of it, the other thing that he does pretty well, I think he's going to be a pretty good release valve for whenever a guard gets trapped or blitzed in a ball screen and needs just that release to be able to hit in the short roll area. He's a pretty good passer. He's comfortable taking 1 or 2 dribbles. I feel okay about him in those circumstances, and that again portends growth, at least to an offensive role. But at the end of the day, we are talking about a relatively low usage offensive player, I think, that is going to make all of his ends meet on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah, and a lot of this is just projection, because when it comes to production with him, this season in the EuroLeague, he had a few games where he really popped. He had I think it was his second last game against Ephes. He was 24-12. Played a lot, got a lot of shots, looked great. And there were games just before that where he's scoring 2 points, 4 boards.
Right.
He is still a very young player, and they're used a little differently in the EuroLeague, so it's hard to just say that it's because they didn't like him or whatever. He's young. Young guys usually don't play. And so the fact that he at least got on the court means something. But there's still a lot of projection to be done with him once you start to dig into it. But the defense is definitely going to be his calling card. So let's take a look at perhaps where you think he fits. Where do you think he could land in this draft? I know that you're really high on him. Do you think that teams are high on him? Do you think that he is going to be taken in the lottery, or where do you see him being taken on draft night?
Yeah, interesting question. I've gotten a pretty wide range because there are teams that genuinely think that he is just not going to be an offensive weapon at all. And then there are teams that love the defense so much that they think that he's worth a lottery pick, like I do. It's hard to say where he's going to go. I mean, as of this recording, my draft guide comes out tomorrow. It'll be out by the time that we run this. I have him 11 on my board. I'm an enormous fan of Garuba. I think he's really, really good. In terms of fits, I mean, I think he'd be incredible with what Golden State runs, but I don't know that they will prioritize him over someone, like a Chris Duarte or a Moses Moody or someone like that. I think he'd be really good in San Antonio. I think San Antonio would make a lot of sense given the fact that they have a need in the front court just across the board right now. I look at Oklahoma City, the fit with Alexei Pokusevski we've talked about on a lot of these videos. I think it would be spectacular. He would be incredible with Poku, kind of being able to come over from the weak side, and then Garuba's the primary ball screen defender a lot of time, and then they'd be able to switch off in those circumstances whenever a team went away from one of them and put the other one in the action. So I really like that fit quite a bit as well. I think it's even possible he could get down to the Knicks or somewhere where God, if he gets down to the Knicks, can you imagine how excited Tom Thibodeau would be given how much he loves Taj Gibson? I mean, this is people are going to hear me say Taj Gibson and, have a reaction to it. but there is a lot of Taj Gibson in what Usman Garuba is able to bring to the table. And Taj Gibson was what, like an 8 or 9 year starter in the NBA, something like that. Like there's a lot of value to be had in that. Like I think Garuba's a little bit better, a little bit more potentially skilled offensively, given the fact that he can put the ball on the floor a little bit more than Taj Gibson ever could. But look, I mean, I think if you get down to the Knicks, like that is an incredible fit at number 19.
Yeah, I think those all make sense. And if he does go to a team like OKC or the Grizzlies, they're going to give him time. They're going to give him time to make mistakes, which I think would be great for him on the offensive end, for him to be able to learn and make mistakes and grow through those. Whereas if you do go to Golden State, even Washington at 15, which I don't think Washington wants to draft a big, but if you go to one of those teams, it's like you better be able to play now, and if you don't have an offensive role now, it could spell trouble for his minutes. So I like him on a development team. Even the Knicks, I think the Knicks have time for development still. So I like all of those fits.
Yeah, Garuba's interesting because there are some guys that try to do too much. There are some guys who don't try to do enough. I think he knows who he is, right? He has a really strong identity of who he is as a player, in part because of those years that he's played so far already at Real Madrid, on one of the best teams in the world outside of the NBA, holding down like a genuine starting spot for a large portion of this year. So I think regardless of where he goes, he's almost certainly the best plug and play guy in that like 10 to 20 range, just because it's really easy to just look at what he's already done against professionals and say, yeah, we can play him right now. Like Memphis was playing Xavier Tillman this year. Usman Garuba is a better version of Xavier Tillman right now. And I loved Xavier Tillman and had a first round grade on him. So yeah, I like Garuba quite a bit. And I think that whatever team gets him is getting a guy that's going to be able to play pretty early in his career.